We're at the beautiful, picturesque Moor Lakes. We're in autumn and I'm going to be out and out boilie fishing in this session. And in terms of a guest to join me, well, they don't come much bigger and better than this man. Not only is he the lord of this manor, but he's probably one of, if not the finest all-round specimen hunters to ever do it. It's none other than Fish Flicks, Nash Tackle's very own Martin Bowler. Not quite sure how I've managed to get him on the show, but I have. As with every single drop episode, there's loads of different tackle, tactics and tips spread throughout the course of the programme for you to enjoy. I'm going to get my stuff off the barrow and then go and meet the man himself. Isn't Martin Bowler? How are you?
What are you doing here? All right, mate.
You well?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit of a cold, but hey, you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about carp.
Well, mate, I've never seen this lake before. I've only had anecdotes from Alan and Ollie, who came a while back, I think.
Would have been before we opened in the February, I think.
And they said it was fantastic. And the one thing that strikes me straight away...
It's a bit harder now, I would say that.
Good, I'll keep that as a caveat. It is ridiculously quiet and unbelievably mature, mate. It's beautiful, this spot. Really
it's a nice lake. It surprises me. Most people that turn up go, oh, it's nicer than what I expected. I don't know what they expect. Well, I mean, just a muddy hole. But yeah, we're in Wiltshire, countryside. It's quiet, peaceful. And that's the experience we're trying to get over to our customers, which is they come here and have that getaway experience. They've got a special place. That's the feel that we want to achieve. So it's nice that you think the same.
That's beautiful. I'm looking forward to it. In terms of what we've got in front of us, we've obviously got a couple of lakes here. Yeah. What generally is the sort of lay of the land in terms of what's in each? What are the options when you come to sort of fish here? And what do you think for us would be a good plan, mate? Right,
well, this lake, and where I suggest you start, is Big Moor. You're looking at around about just short of 6 acres.
Yeah.
We've got 350 carp in here.
Right.
A lot of 20s, doubles. They will go now to over £30. You're looking at 6 foot deep, roughly, depending on the water level, but 6 foot deep. I would let the fish dictate where you cast rather than you trying to find a spot.
Right.
That would be a good start. They like boilies, so have you got plenty of boilies?
We're boilie fishing, mate. I've got a selection, including a bit of a new test bait, which I believe you've got as well.
Yeah,
so.
I've got that, rate that, really like that, really happy with that. So that's good. Maybe fish pop up, a wafter. Keep things simple, sharp hook, rig that doesn't tangle. Let the fish tell you where to cast it out. That's in this lake, and where I suggest, I've left you the banker.
Banker.
Swim.
He says banker. You've been here, mate. These trees were saplings. That's how long this bibby's been here, mate. It's now matured around you. He's in the flyer, clearly.
Well, yeah, I've got the comfy swim, you've got the banker, because you've got a catch. So
put the pressure on me here. You're the expert here, mate. It's on you.
I'm an all-rounder. Right. So the swim, when you first come through the gate, down on the right-hand side, there's a lovely platform there.
Yeah.
That, I would say, has been, joking aside, the most prolific swim on the lake since we opened. It gives you a lot of water to cover. Just fish fairly close in, put a bit of bait over them, spread your rods out, and you do have access, if you want, in that swim, to Little Moor. So Little Moor's our second lake, and that's just over an acre, and you've at least got 60 carp in there. Right. You will have fish to over £30 in there. You've got doubles, 20s.
Mate, it looks unbelievable, and there's plenty of options. There's also, by the looks of it, options to break off, maybe do a bit of stalking or whatever. What I am conscious of, light is dropping. We're at that time of year where it's going to get dark quickly. I'm going to let you get set, get your rods out. I'm going to leave you in a relative bit of peace for a short period of time while I go and get my stuff sorted. And then I'm going to come and punish you, show you here about all things catching the impossible and anything else, mate, because I love a tale, and you've caught a few, mate.
You don't want to listen to my waffle.
I definitely do. I'm going to leave you to it, mate. If you catch one, give me a shout, and I'm going to go around and go in the supposed flyer.
Well, you should have one before darkness.
Here we go.
It's that easy.
Darkness is in 10 minutes, so see you in a bit, mate. All right.
Yeah, see ya.
Martin?
Yeah.
A bit cold, mate, at the moment, I'm going to say.
Yeah, don't know what you got me here for. Easterly wind.
But the rods are out, which is the main thing. What you done? Talk me through briefly, what you done?
I've got a couple of rods out in the middle area, middle zone of the lake. I've put a few boilies over that. I'm just fishing really basic, a wafter, fluorocarbon rig, just a bag of crumbled up boilies, and then just sprayed a few over the top. Just simple, in my experience, the best carp anglers I've ever fished with. Simple, find the fish, basic rig, cast out, don't tangle, that's it. 2 out in the middle, very slack lines, so hopefully they move up and down with confidence. And then just down the bank, I've just flicked one out just in the margins. Again, over a few boilies and a PV8 bag. Nothing complicated whatsoever.
Mate, it's a very similar story. I'm in the flyer, apparently, as you said before.
Well, you said you were getting liners. They're black on you. They're black on you.
I've seen one bosh out and I've had some liners. I've pretty much got one down the middle, if you like, in that middle band, similar to you. Again, out with all of them with a bushwhacker though. For me, I want to be as subtle as possible, because you said before there is just us two fishing it. I want to minimise that disturbance as much as possible. Then I've got one to the right of my swim and one to the left, so I'm hedging my bets. Hopefully through the course of this evening, and then maybe early morning, we can get ourselves one or two. As uncarpy as it is for me to say, an absolute essential in modern day carp fishing is adequate power supply on the bank. At Nash, we've taken care of that need with our Powerbanx range of hubs. There are 2 models in the range, a 30k model and an 80k model. However, before I look at the specifics of each of those, there are a few key features that are common in both models that make it really stand out and unique. First and foremost, they come supplied with a neoprene case. They also have a leather carrying or hanging strap and an integrated 100 lumen torch. On top of that, they also come with a clear LCD charge display to know exactly how much charge you've got left in the power bank itself. It has a USB-C type 1 meter lead supplied with it and a mains quick charge wall adapter. They're all in common throughout both models. However, looking at the specifics of both models, starting with the 30k model, in terms of the actual capacity or charging capacity of it, it obviously varies depending on the device you're using and your usage. It can charge 6 to 12 full charges of a phone and 1 to 2 charges of a laptop. Again, dependent on what you're using. You can get full details of that usage on the Nash website that you can download, or when you buy one in the packaging itself, there's details of it. With the model itself, it comes with 4 different USB ports, one being a fast 18 watt USB and a super fast 45 watt USB-C charging port. That is the 30k model, perfect for short sessions, running multiple devices, nice and small in terms of carry size. Moving on to the big bad boy of the range, the all singing, all dancing 80k version. The 80k model, in terms of capacity, can charge from 16 to 28 times the full charge of a phone and 3 to 4 times the full charge of a laptop, again dependent on usage. In terms of the outputs, on this there is a super fast 65 watt USB-C output, 3 12 watt USB outputs and an 18 watt USB output. On top of that, there's also a 12 volt cigarette style output, perfect for pairing with our heated blanket range or anything else that requires that 12 volt input. That really is perfect whatever you're running, however much you're running it when you're out on the bank. They're the 2 models briefly to look at. Obviously there are more details available on our website, but if you're looking for power on the bank this winter, autumn, spring or summer, don't look any further than the Nash Powerbanx range.
Right, last night, unfortunately, I lost one to begin with. Just a hook pull, one of those things. But early this morning, I managed to get a carp. So, great start. I caught it on a new test bait, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about boilies in a while. But let's have a look at it. It's not massive, but the hardest fish is always the first fish. Right, up you come. Come on, mate. Just let's see your beautiful colours. Bronze, reds in the tail. Lovely fish. And a good start. But let's get it back and try and get a bigger one. Okay, back you go. And let's find another one. There you go, mate. Back up.
Well, unfortunately, an uneventful night for me. I did hear them in this area, but nothing materialised. In terms of my approach rig-wise, well, I'm pretty much hedging my bets. I've got 2 different presentations and I'm fishing to what I'm seeing out there. I'm not fishing to a designated spot that I've used a marker lead to feel around on. And Martin's informed me that the bottom is pretty much featureless in terms of weed and depth variations. However, there are pockets of silt and there are pockets of gravel. Because of that, I've used 2 differing presentations. One being a pop-up presentation, and for me, I've gone in with a hinge stiff rig. It is by far probably my most successful rig when I've pop-up fished, and at this time of year when there's a little bit of leaf litter as we're in autumn, it's a little bit prouder than maybe a Ronnie, so that if there is any detritus there, it sits above it proud, ready for a fish to hopefully come and snaffle it. Now, in terms of my version of the hinge stiff rig that I tie up, I use a 6.5 inch, 20 pound fluorolink boom. At either end of that boom, I've got 2 perfection loop knots. The end that terminates at the lead system, which is a lead clip in this instance, I've got an anti-tangle sleeve that slots over to neaten everything up. I've got 1 blob of putty halfway up that boom just to pin it down, and then a counterbalance blob of putty over the knot at the other end. That then terminates in a ring swivel to the chod section. And in terms of the chod section, I like to fish it probably about 1 inch high with a nice curve in it. It just helps, I think, when it goes in to get good purchase in the fish's bottom lip. And in terms of my success using it, hook to landed ratio, it's been ultra effective. In terms of the hook pattern, I use a size 4 chod twister. I use a little micro rig ring on the actual D and mount my pop-up to it. In this case, I've actually used a bright one. In a complete opposite tack to that, the other rods are fished on the deck. Now, obviously, I'm using the baiting pole to position all the rods. With that, what I like to use on these bottom bait rods is a stiff boom. Because I'm dropping the rig, I like the fact that you have a bit of stiffness in the rig to get separation from the lead system. And the bottom bait rig is basically a version of a Ronnie rig. All I've done is taken, once again, my favourite boom material, which is 20 pound Fluorolink, 6 inches of that. The lead system end is the same anti-tangle sleeve and perfection loop knot that fits onto my lead clip. The other end, I've taken a Ronnie swivel, but I've actually cut off the ring part. So I've just got the swivel and the hook for the actual hook to sit on Ronnie style. What I then do is mount a size 4 twister hook, and what I do is I have twister hooks ready with blowback rig sections on, so a rig ring and a hair tied on it. I then just hook that hook section on, a bit of shrink tube over the top, just like a conventional Ronnie rig, steam the shrink tube with a little bit of an angle, and what I've got is a presentation whereby you've got the stiffness of that rig so that it lays perfectly away from the lead system, the ability to interchange a new hook. If I do get a series of bites, I can react to that bite time window really quickly, get a fresh rig out. I don't need to tie up a new boom section, and also I have the bonus addition of that hair. What that can do in that blowback setup is reset itself if I get picked up by any nuisance fish, although there aren't any in here, but also it gives me the option to use any combination of hook bait, whether that be a wafter, which is what I have been using, a Scopex Squid 15mm trimmed down, or whether I want to use a bottom bait. Either way, with that hair, I can use it. I get nice separation with the hook section, the ability to reset, and really good hook holds. I've been using it for a fair period of time now, and I've found that it may be born out of slight laziness and me not wanting to tie new rigs, but the ability to be able to get fishing again quickly and interchange hooks, for me, is a really important principle throughout the course of all my fishing. Time of year, targeting siltier areas can be infinitely more productive than fishing on those hard gravel spots which have been hammered through the course of the season. The reason for this? Cooler water temperatures often sends carp to deeper, siltier areas. Not only that, the silt holds the last of the natural food before the winter. So they're gathering as many morsels as they can before a winter layup. How do you know that the bottom is silty? Well, a prime indicator is bubbling. Whether the fish be feeding in the substrate directly or whether they be ghosting across the silt and sending up plumes of bubbles, that indicates that the bottom in front of you is comprised of silt. Now, fishing in the silt itself can often be avoided by people. So what I'm here to do is share my tips of how I go about fishing in the silt itself. Firstly, leading around is a key element. You need to decipher exactly what type of silt and depth of silt that you are fishing over. Obviously with that, your standard leading setup using braid, the first thing you can get an indication of with regards to the silt is feeling for the drop. If you get no drop at all, it indicates probably a deeper siltier area. If you are feeling some sort of drop, that'll indicate that there's less prevalence or depth of silt there. Another good way of getting a gauge for the depth of silt is when you have felt the lead down, is just to pull the lead back across the bottom. The more resistance that you're met with at the tip end, generally the deeper the silt. What that means is you'll need to take into account things with your presentation to compensate and work around the depth of silt that you're faced with. That brings me on to your lead arrangement choice. Now, fishing in silt generally for me screams a helicopter rig. What that does is allows you a lot of play to be able to ensure that you're presented on or in amongst the silt itself. A key consideration with a helicopter is to use as light a lead as possible. Why don't you need a heavy lead? Well, silt itself is obviously quite soft generally, and that lead is going to plug. So if you're using a 1 ounce lead, for example, with the fact that it's plugged into the silt, that will increase the bolt effect when a fish chooses to take your hook bait. In addition to this top bead is able to be manipulated further up the leader or closer together depending on the depth of silt that you're faced with. Next is on to your choice of presentation. Now, when fishing on silt, you basically have 2 choices of presentation and probably more importantly, or at least coupled with, a choice of baiting situation to couple that. The first tactic is to present on top of the silt. Something like a high attract pop-up, whether you use something like a hinge stiff rig, a Ronnie rig, but a nice bright pop-up that contrasts the silt, and that is generally fished on top of the silt itself, nice and proud, over a scattering of boilie. What you're trying to effectively do is the fish are in a certain area and you want them to be picking up baits and moving, and that proud presentation of that pop-up on top of the silt is clear, visible, attractive. The carp hones in on it and you get yourself a take. A different tactic would be to present in the silt. Now, you often see carp with really black mouths. They're clearly feeding and comfortable feeding deep within the silt itself, and I've seen them burying their heads to get at the last bits of bloodworm, morsel or bait that is left in the silt. In order to do that, it's really simple. However, you need to tailor your baiting strategy to that. So whether you be using a mix of small baits like flake, pellet, particle, you're looking for a concentrated spot to get those carp grubbing around in the silt itself. With that, rig-wise, you'll be using something like a wafter or a bottom bait in the silt on a blowback rig or whatever your chosen bottom bait or wafter presentation is. That will ensure that when those fish are grubbing around in that high attractive mix in the silt itself, that your hook bait isn't going to be treated with trepidation or caution as it's presented as the freebies are in the silt. Bait choice, when you're targeting silty areas, it's important to really boost the attraction and pulling power of that mix. Silt can often be quite inert, rancid in places, and if you're fishing on that, you really want your bait to stand out and contrast against that. So whether you're using a bright high attract hook bait or whether you're using a mix which incorporates loads of natural boosters, spod syrup, plume juices and high attract food signals, they're all going to be effective in ensuring that the fish can not only hone in on where that bait is, but also feed with gusto. Finally, PVA is a real godsend. Whether you're presenting on top of silt using a pop-up, in which case I'll use something like a parachute, which is 2 bits of our PVA nugget foam in our PVA mesh to help ensure that that is going to sit proud of the silt until it dissolves and then lay very gently on top of the silt, being proudly presented. Or whether you choose to use something like a solid PVA bag or a PVA bag mesh stocking filled with pellet and really attractive high leakage bait. They're all examples of where PVA can really be utilised to help boost attraction and increase the presentation. Don't be scared of silt, embrace it, put those tips into your angling and hopefully you'll see some success.
Fishing with boilies. That wasn't how I started carp fishing. My first experience of fishing for big carp was at Elstow, and that's the home of free on the spot, particle fishing, spomming. So In my early days, teenage days, 20s, I was often always carrying a bucket of particles. I wouldn't even dream of taking, other than a few minis, boilies with me. But I have to say, as time's developed, I've come to learn that I would say as a big fish technique, boilies are far better than particles. And when it really struck home for me was that I was fishing at a lake that was an amazing place. Every time I went, I caught lots of fish by fishing particles, tiger nut, sweet corn, hemp, that kind of thing. And the other lads, they were catching no more, but what they caught was always bigger. And the minute I swapped to a high quality boilie, a good fish meal, my results changed. It was like flicking a switch. It was amazing. I caught carp there to 59 pounds, and if I'd carried on down the particle route, and there is a place for every method, every technique, I don't think I would have caught those fish. Other lakes that I've fished now over the last decade or so, I've become more focused on boilies, and I have to say a few estate lakes in the Dorset area, if you fish with particles, you'll probably get more bites, but there'll be cricket back commons. If you want those big mirrors, those real prizes, then it's far better to fish a boilie. I'm a fish meal man. We used fish feed inducing oil. There was so much oil, our catapult elastics were breaking all the time, and that really changed the game for catching big carp. I dread to think how long ago it was, but it was a long time, 30 odd years ago. So for me, it's a fish meal, and people often say as well, why using fish meal in winter? Well, my logic is I will only fish venues in the winter where the carp are feeding, and they seem to still readily accept a fish meal as long as it's good quality. And the new test bait is that. I've used enough bait over the years to look at it and have confidence, and that's what you want. When you cast out, no matter what you're fishing for, you need confidence, and that bait gives me confidence. I like the taste profile, I like the texture, it's fairly soft, it breaks up, it's not inert, it's working. It's doing something all the time to draw the carp towards me, and it's a really good food source. And those big old mirrors, I go to mirrors because I love mirrors more than anything else. They know what's good for them. It's hard to say how I always fish a boilie because that will change. On this trip, I'm fishing a wafter, crumbled up bags, crumbled up boilies in PVA mesh bags, very simple. But as a rule, I'm quite happy to put a couple of kilos out. I'm not focused. A lot of my fishing might be with a chod or Ronnie rig, stuff like that, and I will spread the bait out. I want the fish moving, picking up a bait. Oh, there you go. Carp was close to picking up a bait there. But anyway, I can carry on. And I want them moving. They're more likely to make a mistake. So my thought process is to put a nice spread of bait out, fish the rigs over the top, get the carp coming in, get them, especially at this time of year, I think they're like harvesting the bottom, and that's what I visualise. So simple rigs, sharp hook, a good boilie, for me, a fish meal, and I'm pretty confident of catching carp. On this trip, I'm using a very basic rig. My wafter rig is a size 6 hook generally, just simple D rig, little screw on it, tucked back through. You've seen it a million times, nothing else. The bait I'm going to use on this trip, I can't see me using much more than a kilo. Temperatures have really crashed. We had a frost when we arrived. We've got an easterly wind. So just try and think about the situation you're in. Don't always follow the same thing. In this situation, they're not going mad. So just a bag and just let the fish tell you what to do. If I start getting more bites, I'll put in more bait. But at the moment, I'm happy to fish with very little bait, knowing it's high quality, the fish will find it, and I'm fairly confident I'm going to get bite.
There's no doubting the carp catching effectiveness of boilies. I'm here to share with you 5 top tips to make the most out of 1 kilo of boilies. Tip number 1 would be to crumb your boilies. Not only do you increase the volume, but also crumb itself is a great carrier for all sorts of liquid attractions, whether that be natural boosters, whether that be spod syrup. It really does increase attraction and cover a large area and volume of the swim with small items for fish to graze and peruse around rather than big whole boilies. Tip number 2 would be half baits. Whether you're fishing a river with flow, a plateau, a bar, and you want your baits to stay in situ and not be rolled around off features, halving your baits again gives you more volume and ensures they're going to stay on those prominent features that you're fishing to. Tip number 3, wash out your boilies. It's a simple process of pouring your boilies into a tub, adding some lake water. That lake water will seep into the boilies, it will release some attraction, but it will also mean that your boilies become paler in colour, and on pressured day ticket waters, for example, where fish see a lot of fresh bait, that can often be a real edge in order to get fish to feed quicker and you get quicker bites on your spots. Tip number 4, which is to air dry your boilies. This is a great tip if you're wanting to protect them from nuisance fish and bird life, or if you're using a throwing stick, for example. Being air dried and the bait being firmer will allow you to put it further distances more accurately without splitting. In order to do it, once again, put your baits out on a big unhooking mat, in the air or in an air dry bag. Swirl them round, let all the moisture absorb, and then put them back into the boilie bag and add some pink Himalayan rock salt. That will get the residual moisture out of the baits and ensure they're nice, firm, hard, and air dried, ready for you to use. And finally, boost your boilies. Essentially what you're doing is you're adding additional attraction and using the boilie as a carrier. You can add cultured stick mix, liquid so that they coat the baits. Pretty much the options are endless. We have the natural boosters range, plume juices, there's loads you can add to it, but what you're really doing is increasing the attraction and increasing the food signal that comes from your bait. There's 5 tips to get the most out of your kilo of boilie. Now I know that a kilo of boilie might not seem like a lot of bait, however, if you utilise those tips, you can certainly make the most out of that kilo. Well. Typical, isn't it? A lovely bit of food, lovely social, just about to tuck into bed, and the rod absolutely tore off. And I have opened my Moor Lakes account with this beautiful scaly stunner. I'm chuffed to bits. I don't know what time it is. I'm going to slip him back, hopefully get a restful night's sleep, but not too restful. There might be maybe 1 or 2 more. If not, 1 in the morning. Either way, I'm one happy angler. Mr. Bowler.
What are you doing?
Success, I see, sir.
Yeah, a couple of bites last night. I don't normally allow anyone to retain them, but because you're here and I need to show you them for the film, I've retained them. So yeah, a couple of bites. Again, night bites. It's this time of year, it seems, when it switches over. I carried on fishing exactly the same. My basic approach, wafter, bag, crushed up boilies, nothing else. I did sprinkle a handful over each rod, and that's it. 2 bites. You?
And a bite for me as well, mate.
Oh, well done, mate.
Come on. So, night bites it is, mate. We've capitalised on that feeding spell. Life is good, mate. Unlike you, though, because I play by the rules, what I've done is drag the camera crew out of the pit in the evening, film some of it, done a little lift shot at night, a few stills, and slipped him back. But the rods are still out. We've got a little bit of time. I reckon it's time to see exactly what you've got, mate.
Yeah, I'll get them out. We'll have a look. Let's do it. Bye, mate.
Martin, the fruits of your evening success, mate. Very well done. What a pair of corkers, mate.
Yeah, lovely fish.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for hosting us here, mate, at the beautiful Moor Lakes. Showing us how they're caught as well, mate, and just generally having a lovely catch-up chat of all things passion for angling, fish flicks, and general nostalgia, mate. You're a legend.
You're most welcome, mate. Come again soon.
I definitely will. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. You can pick up on some of this man's boilie fishing expertise and wisdom. It's been absolutely brilliant to have you on. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again soon. Martin, thank you so much, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Let's let him go.
Well, you never know, there's always time for one more bite.
Fingers crossed.
There's always time for one last cast. Really wanted a day bite and dropped a bag of boilies in just down next to this overhanging tree. Sat back quietly and the rod just buckled over. Super exciting. I've managed to get it away from the woodwork and now it's boring down under my feet. Hopefully I'm going to get one in the day. There you go, that's a nice fish. That's what we want. Well, it was worth a last cast. It's raining now. It was great fun getting a day bite. Rod hooped over, lovely battle. Got a dumpy little scaly fella to end the trip. Really pleased with that.